Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another video lecture. And today we'll be focusing on The Tiger King by Kalki. Kalki is the pen name of Ramaswamy Iyer. He's got a full name which is much longer than what I have just said, and it's in the video. I'm not going to try to pronounce it and butcher it. I'm just going to take a little time to give you a little introduction to the text, just the overall themes and what to expect from the story and everything. And then we'll delve more into it, as I always do, about the themes in the story, what it actually entails, just a brief explanation. You will have to go through the story on your own, as always. Keep your textbook with you when you're watching this video. It will help you to understand what I'm talking about much better. I'm going to be referencing paragraphs and page numbers as well, so keep that in mind. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. So The Tiger King is narrated by Kalki as the writer. Like, he is the narrator, he is the one who's telling us everything. So it's from his perspective, he's the storyteller. So whatever we see, whatever we know is coming straight from him, straight from the narrator. He adds his own little insights into places, he adds his own little comments, and he makes observations about the story and stuff like that. So this is why it's very unique, and this is why it is included in your book, because it's a very well written piece of literature. The genre of the story is called satire. Satire is when you use humor as a tool to point towards something that is wrong in what you are observing. Basically, so for example, if you've ever seen the movie The Dictator, it is a great example of satire. It's satirizing like the dictatorial culture and everything else. If you haven't seen the movie The Dictator, watch it. I'm not talking about the Charlie Chaplin movie, I'm talking about the latest movie, The Dictator. I'll put a link to it in the description. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Just be careful, do not watch it around like people in your house and everything, because it is a bit R-rated. There is some adult humor in it, but at the same time it is a very, very good example of what satire is like. Another good example of a modern satirical movie is Borat, which if you haven't seen, you should see as well. Another good example is Popstar, which is by The Lonely Island, which is a comedy group, and they make incredible satirical videos. So this is like your introduction to satire as a genre. I'll be putting links to books, other articles, and other stuff that you can read that is an example of satire in the video. So this is basically satirical. Kalki is using the Tiger King as a sort of mirror that he's holding up against society. He's trying to show like what the bureaucracy looks like, what monarchy looks like, what the conceit of people in power, which basically means that the people who are in power have these grandiose ideas about themselves and their lives, and how they affect everybody around them, how their decisions affect everybody around them. That's basically the gist of the story. So let's just get into a little bit more. I'll be giving detailed explanations in a little while. One more important thing to notice about the story is that it is told in the way of a fairy tale or a fantastical tale, which has a lot of suspense, a lot of thrill. Like, it starts off with like an infant talking, like the king is just born and he starts talking, which is his Kalki's way of showing us like that, yeah, this is not actual facts, this is not a real story, but like this is fantastical, this is not based in reality in any way, shape or form. I'm outside while I'm recording this voiceover. I've put in a significant section on satire and its definition and everything else, because I feel like that's the most important thing you can actually learn. One of the biggest examples of satire in Indian media is the show Office. I don't know if you're old enough to remember it, or if you aren't, then you should probably look it up on YouTube and you should watch it, because that is exactly like the perfect example of what satire is in the context of the Indian society or in the context of Indian media. Context, as we talked about, is really, really important. So let's just take a look at what is satire. Satire, everything is on the screen. You can pause it and read it. I'm just talking over it, so you can understand like basically what I'm saying and what is actually going on the screen. So the definition is on the screen. You can read it and it's going to be very clear to you. But the idea of writing satire is because you attack things with humor. Like, an idea can only be attacked by another idea, right? You cannot attack an idea with violence. You cannot attack an idea by a physical form. An idea does not have like a physical, tangible form. So that's where satire comes in. That's where humor comes in, is because you're trying to incite change in society. You're trying to incite change in the way people think. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it is basically the writer trying to say, hey, look at this, look at the society, the way we behave. Isn't this crazy? Isn't how the way society works weird? That's what satire is. And it is a literary device, and
It is very, I mean, very, very useful. Especially like if you're trying to comment on something political or trying to comment on something that is like religious or something that people get offended over. If you approach it from a place of humor, if you approach it from a place of irony, it's much more easier to get your point across rather than just attacking your point directly. So there are plenty of examples of satire in literature as well. I mean, classical examples like Gulliver's Travel, and there's Alexander Pope's stories, there's poems, and there's stuff like that. So there's a list here like Huckleberry Finn. You can look at Animal Farm is quite famous, where George Orwell uses the concept of a farm and the animals in it to compare it to government. Catch 22, Joseph Heller is incredible. So it's just these things. Go through whatever is going on the screen, pause whenever you want it. And once again, I'm sorry for like the background noise, but there's a storm outside.
So let's just talk about what the themes of the chapter are and do some basic literary analysis. And I'll try to explain just like a general overview of the story. I'm not trying to go into details, too many details, because you'll have to read it on your own and then you can ask me questions and then we can kind of like have a discussion and have a rapport between us. But for the moment, I'm just gonna go briefly through the chapter, explore some of the themes, talk to you about what like the themes of the story are. There are certain interesting words that he uses. There are certain things that he uses. I would want you to look them up. So without further ado, let's get into it. For 8, Chapter 2, The Tiger King. Let's see. The Maharaja of Pratibandhapuram is the hero of this story. So basically, who's the protagonist? The Maharaja of Pratibandhapuram. Basically, that's his name. That's his, and his full title is just too long. Like, he may be identified as His Highness Jamidar General Khalidar Major Satavyagra Samhari Maharada Jaraj Vishwabhavan Samrat Sir Jalani Jang Jang Bahadur MADACTC or CRCK, but this name is often shortened to the Tiger King. Now, this is like, he starts off the story in a very, very humorous way. You can already tell this is not going to be a very serious story. This is like, his name is literally an entire paragraph. Which is the way he shows. Like, if you look at dictators in history, like if you look at somebody like Muammar Gaddafi, who is like one of the most famous dictators of my generation, at least like when we were growing up, Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, these were the names we learned. And like if you look at the Wikipedia pages, it's the same exact thing. There's like a list of accomplishments that just goes on for paragraphs. They would like give themselves medals, they would give themselves country's highest honors. So this is what Kalki is basically showing, because he was a freedom fighter. Kalki was a freedom fighter. He joined Gandhiji's Satyagraha movement. So he had like an up close and personal look at what happened to like the Indian monarchy once like the Britishers took over. Because if you remember, the Britishers took over through the policy of divide and rule, right? So like the rulers were still kings in their kingdoms, but like the kingdoms were controlled by the British. Everything was controlled by the British. So the kings and everybody else, they were just basically figureheads, because they still had like villages and everything under their control, but at the same time not really. And they spend most of their time like doing stuff like hunting, doing stuff like painting, or just like going out to wars for no reason, and just basically living a life that is full of just, I mean, insanity. Yes, like it's not even explainable. Like we can't even, like somebody like us, somebody from the modern times, we can't even relate to that sort of a thing, because we have literally no concept. The best example in our times would be like somebody like Jeff Bezos or somebody like Mark Zuckerberg, who have so much money that we have literally no concept of how much money they have. So they could be doing stuff with their time, like, oh, I'm gonna raise like 500 chickens. Oh, I'm gonna like say, like Elon Musk, I'm gonna go to Mars. Of course, but he go to Mars. Like none of us can do anything about it. Like we're just middle class people. We're gonna get a job, we're gonna do this, we're gonna build a house. That's the best we can got. Like some of us might get successful enough, but like not to that level. So it's very unrelatable, and this is what he shows. Like from the eyes of a common man, like the life of a Maharaja or the life of a crown prince or everything is just so beyond like reality. It's insanity at that point. Like it's just so far removed from like what an actual real person would do in certain situations. So like just in the first paragraph, like he can tell us so much. Like just through just the first paragraph. This is just the first paragraph. I haven't even gotten into the rest of the story yet. So this is what you get from the first paragraph. Paragraph has a word called the Stuka bomber. Stuka bomber is basically a German aeroplane which was used to drop munitions during the Second World War. Look it up. I might add a link to it in the description, but you need to look it up. Just remember, whenever you're sitting and watching these video lectures, just take a rough notebook and make notes of things. I'll try to highlight stuff in the video. I usually do these words that I've highlighted in this video as well. If you're paying attention, you'll find them. And so look up their meanings, and like this Stuka bomber, you need to look this up because it's something you'll enjoy learning about. Like the Stuka bomber, they had like a very particular sound, which I mean you can find clips of it on YouTube and everything. So I would rather you find it out on your own than me explain like it to you in a video. So look up Stuka bombers, look up Panzers, look up everything else. Like just go down the rabbit hole, children. Like be curious. So the important thing about the story, one thing that we noticed, if you see in the third paragraph, right at the start, it is imperative to disclose a matter of vital importance about the Tiger King. Everyone who reads of him will experience the natural desire to meet a man of his indomitable courage face to face. But there is no chance of its fulfillment. As Bharat said to Ram about Dashrath, the Tiger King has reached the final abode of all living creatures. In other words, the Tiger King is dead. Now, he starts off the story by telling us that the Tiger King is dead. So where do we go from here? So this is a very interesting literary device where you start the story from the end and you move your way, work your way towards the beginning with the readers. Because like Kalki is the narrator, he's our guide through this literary journey, he's our guide through this chapter. So he's taking us. So he starts off the story by telling us that the Tiger King is dead. Well, that builds up a curiosity in the reader. Why is the Tiger King dead? How did he die? Who is the Tiger King? Because we still don't know who the Tiger King is except for like his one paragraph long name. So this is how our story begins, by us finding out that the Tiger King is dead. Now the story starts with like the Tiger King being born, and he starts talking as soon as he is born, and an astrologer is like, oh, what is this? This is a miracle. A child is talking in 10 days. A 10-day-old child is talking. So this is Kalki's way of telling us like, all right, this is a fantastical story. Like this is still fantasy, in the realm of fantasy. This is not reality at all. Alright, so as we move on now, page 10, section 2. So this paragraph is very interesting as well, as it says, Crown Prince Young Bahadur grew. I'm sorry, I'm calling it Young because my initial instinct is to pronounce it Young as Carl Jung, the philosopher, but it's actually Jung Bahadur. Sorry about that. So yeah, Crown Prince Jung Bahadur grew taller and stronger day by day. No other miracle marked his childhood days. The boy drank the milk of an English cow, was brought up by an English nanny, tutored in English by an Englishman, and saw nothing but English films. Exactly as the crown princes of all the other Indian states did. So once again, this is Kalki telling us like what the situation was like back in those days, where where English was thought to be like the language of monarchy, or language of educated people, while Hindi and all the local languages were reserved for peasants or lower class people, as the Britishers thought. So this is another way, like we were talking about that day of culture, like the last lesson. I think if everybody has read it, I was talking to you about last lesson, one class at least out of you. But if you read the last lesson, this is like one of the most important things about it, is like the erasure of culture by an occupying force. This is a very long topic, I'm not getting into it too much, but at the same time, like this is where the contrast is drawn by Kalki, is he's telling us like, okay, this is how like the Britishers influenced our system as well, influenced our society as well. Prophecy, which like the main driving force behind the story is a prophecy which says like the Tiger King can kill 99 tigers, but he has to be aware of the 100th tiger, because the 100th tiger spells his doom. So he decides like, what if I kill all the 100 tigers before the prophecy is fulfilled? And like the astrologer is like, alright, I'll give up astrology if you kill 100 tigers. So this is basically like his main driving force through his entire life. So as you can see, like he's showing like this person who's born, this like Tiger King, who is just like, he didn't achieve anything. Like he wasn't the Tiger King because he battled a tiger or he was survived a tiger attack. He was the Tiger King because suddenly everybody was like, oh, this baby is talking and he's saying, oh, I'll beware all tigers, and there's a prophecy and this and that and blah blah. So basically he's showing us like the monarchs of that time, or like the kings of that time, used to spend their time on frivolous things. I'm not saying all of them, this is not a generalization, but I'm saying most of them at that time had like their pastime or hobbies usually involved hunting. Like if you read about it, there used to be times when hunters would kill like 500 to 1,000 tigers a day. That's the reason why tigers went extinct for a certain point. Like they were hunted to the point of extinction. And you can tell like they have no respect. Like these people. I mean, usually most humans don't have any respect for their ecology. Don't have any respect for animals. Don't have any respect for their surroundings. For them, animals are just things for sport. You hunt them, you kill them, you wear their skin as clothes, or you do something with them, or you mount them on your wall or whatever. There's like nobody can. The Maharaja puts forth the decree that in Pratibandhapuram nobody can hunt tigers, and he is the only one who can hunt tigers. He almost loses his kingdom to a British officer because he doesn't let him hunt tigers, and he has to like pay 50 diamond rings to his wife just to get him out of his hair, just to get him out of his kingdom. Maharaja's tiger hunt like goes so far that he's killed basically every tiger in Pratibandhapuram, and he figures out, okay, what's the other way for me to get more tigers to kill, more tigers to kill, what do I do? So he decides to marry into another state so he can kill tigers in their state as well. So as you can see, like his entire driving force behind his existence is just killing tigers, this dude. He doesn't want anything, he doesn't want to read anything, he doesn't want to improve his kingdom, he doesn't want to improve the lives of his populace, of his people or anything. No, he just wants to kill 100 tigers before like the 100th tiger kills him. And which is where like the irony. So if you go through the chapter, this is like things happen and like he runs out of tigers. He tries to threaten his Diwan, his minister, and everybody that if you don't get me 100 tigers, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna do this. And like the story ends on a very ironic note, as like when he thinks he kills the 100 tiger, but he actually doesn't. That's the twist. I'm not gonna spoil it for you if you read the story. But at the same time, like he dies in the end because of a very stupid reason. Like this is like the most anticlimactic end to his tale ever. So this is how Kalki shows like at the end of the day, like no matter what a king does or no matter what he does, like nothing matters. Like irony, that's the irony of it all. Like you can be the most powerful king in this world, but if like you get an infection from a wooden splinter, you die. That's it. Like nobody is above and beyond like the machinations of nature. Nobody is above and beyond like being human, basically. Like no matter how much you think that you've been chosen by the gods to rule over people, no matter what you call yourself, the Tiger King or this or MED or ACTC, you're just a human being. You can die just as easily as the rest of them. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is something else entirely. It's satire. It's about making fun of like the government bureaucracy and everything, and how badly rulers used to rule over the places. And you can even see things now, like people in positions of power abuse their power and do things in a different way, do things in much weirder way, you can say. Like, I mean, they live a completely different life than us. So this was basically like a general summary of the story. Now let's just move on towards the questions and answers and all the boring stuff.